and it goes out over Twitter.
Awesome.
And it's just, what do we normally say when we get a complaint? Let's say it without having to wait for a complaint.
There we go. That's great. Really, really good.
Yeah, it's fun. I think this week upcoming is we're going to talk about seasonality,
Okay.
come and
Are you
go.
tracking your responses and things?
Well, so far people aren't responding directly to that.
Okay. All right.
Still doing the comment cards, and those are now we've got a new is interested, much more interested in the comment cards, and I go to his operations meeting every Thursday, and we go through what the comments are and what our responses are.
That's really neat. I like that idea.
I like it.
Too.
So if you're just joining us, don't worry, we haven't begun the webinar yet. You're just hearing some of the background discussion between our speakers as we wait to go live. So looks like we have 7 schools online. So they're popping in here. We'll wait another minute or two.
Something happened.
Yeah, you should be seeing the full. It's called magic.
Ooh,
I know, I know.
Knowledge-y.
there it
All
is.
right. There we go. Okay, well, let's get started, and hopefully we have 10 schools signed up today. Good afternoon. My name is Josh McNair. I am the Director of Learning at NACUFS, and I've invited Bart and Kimberly today to do their presentation, which we were just discussing that they've done in several other venues, both with NACUFS and on their own campuses. We are working hard at NACUFS to ensure that learning that has been well received by the membership is, we use the term repurpose. This was a national conference presentation that received extremely, if you're just coming on, okay, somebody's, all right, I'm gonna mute that feedback is coming when people haven't muted their phones. Okay, we're good there. Sorry about that. So we're trying to repurpose and capture and continue to share good content with a wider audience. So thank you for joining us today. For those of you who are online with us today, there is a chat feature within the web software. You want to be looking for some sort of toolbar. Sometimes the toolbar will sort of ascend or descend on your main screen, and by moving your mouse there, it'll pop down a little toolbar for WebEx, and you'll see a chat or a chat bubble there. And as you have questions, please use that chat function. And I think we agreed, Bart and Kimberly, that we'll just kind of deal with those questions as they come up and are relevant to what you're presenting. All right, so let me turn this over. And I was having some difficulties with my slow laptop this morning. It's been one of those days. Give me a moment here.
Sure.
Again, it's having trouble connecting. But Kimberly was just asking me about whether we ever have technical issues.
Sorry, I brought that up.
Yeah, we'll
No,
blame
that's okay. Let me put this back up there. All right, Kimberly and Bart, are you seeing your first slide with your photos there?
Our Notice Network slide, yes.
Yes, okay, good. So let's try to go from there. I'll let the two of you introduce yourselves and how you came about developing this presentation and where you've presented it. So,
Okay, Bart, you would like to get started, but
Sure. My name's Bart Hippel. I'm the Director for Marketing and Communication at the University of Maryland. We operate dining services independent, about $73 million a year. We have about 11,000 students living on campus and about 2,000 commuter or optional dining plans going at this. We have 35 locations on campus, and we brought Kimberly in to help us sharpen up marketing.
thank you, Bart. And I'm Kimberly Bednelli, and I work with hospitality systems. And my background basically is a marketing operator. I was at Virginia Tech for 28 years, and then worked at Stanford for a little over 3 years, and then came back to this side of the world after a bicoastal marriage, and decided that maybe it was time to go home someday. And have maintained my relationships with NACUFS and met some folks at one of the conferences and said, "Hey, what do you know about this?" And so as we talked and talked and talked, came to pass that Bart and I started to work together a little over a year ago, and have had some relatively good success with primarily telling the story and getting the word out and being noticed for having the word out. So, Josh, if you just flip the screen.
yeah, I hear you.
First thing
Or
we're going
come
to
up
do is
with a new process, whatever.
quick overview of where we're going to go with this presentation. We're going to start with what are we trying to do? We're trying to get noticed. One thing we believed at the University of Maryland is that we were doing a great job, but we weren't getting noticed for that or recognized for that. And I would constantly hear, we need to tell our story. And I believed I was telling it in all possible directions all the time. So we're going to talk about how we were a story in the making, how to go about getting noticed, where to start, who to talk to, what a plan looks like, and how to make a plan, and then what do you do about that? Where do you send? You track your results, because results really are kind of the litmus test of where you've been. Josh?
All right, I'm doing this manually on this end.
That's okay. I'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about our next thing. As Bart said, one of the things that we were really wanted to do is get noticed because University of Maryland and frankly some other schools that I have worked with say, we watch these highly ranked schools and we know that they're great, but you know what? We're pretty good too. And why is it that we aren't being noticed? And part of the reason is that you haven't got a notice strategy. So as we progressed in our project here, we as Bart told you, we had a lot of there was a lot of things that Bart was doing to talk about University of Maryland's dining. But one of the things we never got right down to is talking about it in terms of what was important to the University of Maryland. And so we decided that in order to get noticed, and you're only as good as they think you are, we had to create our own reputation. We have a great reputation, but we had to create one that would yield us the notice that we needed. And of course, you've got the person down there below who actually created her own reputation to become the Taylor Swift that we know today. So, Bart, if you wouldn't mind taking it from here, and Josh, we're going to go to the next slide.
Yep, working on it. There we go.
We went around and we started off with some assessment. What was going on out there? So people are saying, Bart, you're not telling our story. We need to tell our story. We need to beat our own drum. We need to take credit. But I didn't know what people knew about us. So we went out and found out, what do people know on campus about us, about our values, about our priorities, about the wonderful things that we're doing. I could list 10 great things that we've done recently, but we found that few people could. And through this process, we came to believe that we're truly a hidden gem. We're an untold story, that we were something everybody just saw as background, and that we were the people responsible for that situation. If we chose to step into the foreground, we had plenty to talk about. Josh, we transformed our, please slide, we had transferred our program from a retail program to an anytime dining program. The students could come in any number of times a day and eat anything they wanted all day long from the beginning to the end of the semester. Huge change for us, a tremendous improvement in our delivery system, in our business model. We eliminated 6.3 million single-use disposables from the waste stream. We hired an entire of culinarians. We went from having a whole bunch of really good cooks to having qualified and trained chefs in charge of operations, leading a team of really great cooks. We serve fresh vegetables, and I mean, look at what we're doing. We're doing these things. We've got all these many successes. Still, people just thought of us as, dining service, and overlooked what we believed were the great things that we were doing. Josh, if you would.
Yep.
I was, of course, telling our story, and I was telling it as best I could, and I had created 5 that I thought would talk about what was important to dining services. I would always try and bring everything I said or every menu I put out back to these 5 things: that we serve safe, healthy food, we provide customer service, that we are involved in the University of Maryland and in the College Park and surrounding area community. I always talk about sustainability, and I talk about financial responsibility, that there's a limit to what we could do because we're being truly responsible with our customers' money and with the university's funding, because we are self-sustained and self-supporting. These were the messages I kept doing. So what I wanted to do next was create a plan that would get these things noticed, or that would get us noticed, whether it was things that came out of my office that I had created or not. What did we want to do? And what actually ended up happening, a huge uptick in the and the media attention that we got after we implemented the plan. You're doing great. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. If you'll hit the next one. And when, that big spoiler alert that we gave you, which is our ta-da moment, is that, we did have a 350% increase in media attention. And that doesn't mean just big stories or what have you. We count a lot of things. We'll show you in a little bit what that meant. We tracked it all. But one of the things that one of Bart's first questions is, Kimberly, we're doing this really well, and we get involved with lots of different organizations, and we're always out there. How come? And so we decided to break it down, and I've been privileged to work with several universities to figure out how it would work at the University of Maryland. And it tends to be different at universities, but getting noticed starts with a lot of the ideas about, what is it we stand for and what have you. And so we get back to that getting noticed thing. And one of the things that we want to make sure we tell you all is not only that you need to do this if you feel like it, but how to do it. So we want to set a stage for why you would want to get noticed anyway. And being noticed isn't about ego. Being noticed means you can do some really awesome things that you might not have been able to do prior to people finding credibility in your program. So, yeah, it feels great to get noticed. And it's really great to have things written about you. But more importantly, there's some real foundational needs for why you want to toot your own horn, so to speak. You get a better influence on your perception. People like Josh and others have said, well, we don't know much about this program, and why not? One of the things that I find most important is that when you are getting noticed, your administration is noticing you as well. And while that might not be important to every university, I'm pretty sure that having an administration, and Bart, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that if your administration is on board with you, it doesn't hurt. And that being said, that can lead directly into influencing your program funding. If you are interested in the rankings, Princeton Review, Niche, whatever else, they often depend on how much notice you get. It helps you achieve your goals, and as we'll show you a little bit, the different priorities and pillars that we came up with at the University of Maryland had a nice way of going, fitting into this strategy. And then, of course, intrinsic revenues and financial revenues are there as well. Josh, if you'd hit that next one. So basically, being noticed is about knowing that your team is achieving and what your team is achieving and how to communicate it, measuring what you're achieving and knowing what it means to you, and reminding not only your customers, but your team about their success and what it means to the organization. We'll lead you through the process that we went to get to this place. But one of the things that you'll find extremely important as you do this with your universities and colleges is that if your team's not on board, nobody is. And so, Bart, if you think about it, we ran through a little bit that we did do a seminar with him. We'll talk about a little bit, but bottom line, you got to bring them on board. And so that's part of what we were doing. So, Bart, will you take the next one, please?
I'd be happy to. So what did we start off with? We started off by our story. We all as a department had to agree on what our story was, what was important to us. I had these 5 things that I talked about from the marketing office, but were those same things resonating with the people in operations, not just the managers, but also the line servers and the dishwashers? Did the people who are working independently in small cafes around campus understand and really agree with these different points of view? And how do I make that happen? Or how do I change the points of view so that we're telling the story that people want told? Gosh. The first thing we did was we sat down and we talked with the director of dining service. Really, we were lucky. We were just phenomenally lucky. We sat down with Colleen and she just reeled out a was very similar to mine, but not quite the same. But she said, these are the important points for me and for our department. And we said, from here, we'd like to go and talk to the team and talk to the dining services people and all the managers. And in one of the warm up for back to school meetings, we sat everybody down with giant pieces of paper and Sharpies. And we asked them 4 questions. We wanted to know, what do we as a department do well? And how do we know that we do it well? Ask them, what makes us proud of what we do? What do you tell people about dining services? So when you're at home or at church or out and you say, I work for dining services, oh, what's that like? What good things do you tell people about that? What makes you really happy about it? And then what should we do? We talked to you a bunch about what you're happy about now. What do you think we should do next? Where should we move forward? Our goal in this session was to find out what people were already thinking so we could frame our story in ways that related with the efforts that our team was already putting forth. I thought that would make a whole lot of sense.
I might interject here a minute, Bart. One of the things that we found enlightening with this is that we were the last group on the docket. So we were late in the afternoon. People, and food service people, they don't like to sit all day. Well, they kind of had been. And so we get on board and we're thinking, oh my goodness, we're going to lose them all. But what was important is that when we asked them these 4 questions, it really got to the heart of why they work for University of Maryland, what they are proud about, and how the work that they do fits in there so that they can be proud of their overall achievements and thus get noticed. So thank you, Barton.
Yeah, we got pages and pages of feedback. Transcribing
Pages.
it was a pain, but
For a late
there was
afternoon, that was pretty awesome.
good, thoughtful feedback, not just from the assistant directors, but from everybody at the meeting. They all had something to say. It was really a good feedback at the end of that hour. So as a result, we came up with these, as a group, came up with these 5 pillars for communicating. These, we called them pillars because the things that our story rests on. Before we had talked about customer service, now about consistently excellent customer service and exceptional culinary experiences. We talked about the elimination of campus food insecurity, not just for the resident students, but for the whole campus. And we're working on that very hard, and we talk about it a lot amongst each other. We want to have noteworthy sustainability impacts, not just be sustainable, but have noteworthy impacts on the campus and on the world. And we want to work in a thriving workplace, a place where we take care of each other, we promote each other, we help each other move forward, and we celebrate each other's achievements. Financial responsibility got moved to background, to a back conversation that we wouldn't necessarily push forward, but we have to be aware of as we're doing what we do.
Thank you, Josh. And where we took it from here, I think one of the things, if you look at that list again, and I understand this presentation is going to be available to you all, but if you go back and you compare the great messages that Bart was putting out prior to this exercise, and you compare it to those words that we came up with that became, I think even today, Bart, are very, very strong pillars that you still try to achieve as well. You'll see that there's very strong language in those pillars, that we're not looking for being sustainable. We're looking for noteworthy sustainability impact. We're not looking for good customer service. We're looking for consistently high. So I think it's important to recognize that those adjectives and those impacts really begin to let you identify your story. And so you'll find your story in a variety of ways. We started out with the director, and then we went to the staff. But you can also find it in your strategic plans if they're up to date or if you have one. Whatever your university is saying, if you have university partners, if you have a nutrition department or you've got a sustainability department on campus or a hospitality program, many of them have strategic plans, and those strategic plans can also impact your story. And again, one of the things we found most valuable at University of Maryland is through discussion with the team. All of them, they were highly engaged, highly motivated, very proud of what they do, and they just wanted to hear about it. So we got the team buy-in, and then we started to develop a script. And this is where it kind of got a little fun, right, Bart? And then we started to say, whatever we do, whatever stories we tell, they're going to need to rest on those pillars. And so we needed to know why our story was important. And Josh?
I'm going to say, Kimberly, I'm just going to speak in for a moment.
Sure.
We did notice at other universities who recognition that we thought we deserved and that we believe we earned, their whole team used language to talk about the same pieces of their story. You could go anywhere and you would hear the same buzz phrases, which was great. But that means somebody was feeding them to the whole internal team.
Right. They were all on the same story. That was something that many of our colleagues do very well, and sometimes we need help doing that. So to continue on, we wanted to identify and solidify the story's key points. We wanted to include realistic ways to evaluate our achievement. You put a story out there. What is it that you are hoping will happen if you put that story out there? What behavior do you want to change? Do you want to make some kind of a measurable impact with that? And then I'll kind of boil down to understanding our priorities, which we've talked about, and to make sure that all of our communications are geared toward that story. And so, Bart, you want to take the next one and talk a little bit about how we did it? How we
Did
talked
it?
to our audiences? Yeah.
Sure. Well, we set up a series of posters, and they were small posters, and we put the time clocks. And first, we talked about what the 5 pillars were, and then we broke out each pillar and explained each pillar using very short and simple phrases that people could understand. We spoke passionately about it. I went to each of the different subunit going back to school, started that year, and talked with each smaller team about how important this is and how our students need to hear this from us.
There's many times that you'll find a frontline employee who has the right words can be the greatest ambassador of your message. And so one of the things we started to put together was, what is our script? What is it that we would like to have the cashier say? What is it? Well, we don't have cashiers at University of Maryland, sorry, but what was it we would like to have, the front folks that talk to people day in and day out. what's the words that we want to have come out of their mouth? And so as we talk to the team, and we talk to ourselves, we got a little bit better defined. So, Josh, the next one.
But then we wanted to, talking about our story, the story needs to mean something to the people you're listening to. So when we were talking to our team, we break the story down so that they could understand why this meant something to them and what specific function and role, how that impacted the story. A great example is in our dish room. That's where we do all of our composting and all of our recycling, and virtually everything that comes out of the dining room is composted or recycled. Our dish team really understands this. They really understand the impact on the land and on the state of Maryland. They understand why it's important to get things sorted properly. They know just what chute to put it down, but where it goes after that. And they're proud of that, and they can speak to that themselves if anybody ever asks them, and they do get asked. But now, if we're talking about a different audience, if we're going out into the internal audience, into the world here, we need to take these same messages and point them toward that particular audience. So if we're talking to, if I want to talk to an industry publication, or if I want to talk to a local magazine, or if I want to talk to a group of parents or a group of students or somebody else, I need to remember who they are and which pieces of this story and which pieces of each of those 5 stories are they going to actually be interested in hearing.
And so you parse your information out to those that would that would accept it the best in the spirit in which you want them to accept it. So, Josh, if you'd hit the next one. So that, knowing your story, knowing the elements of that story, knowing which audiences you're going to want to find it, you kind of have to decide where you're going to send it. And one of the things that we spent quite a little bit of time on is knowing this list of items. Who are our audiences? You have students, you have families, you've got your partners on campus, you've got administration, but you also have your industry. You have and we'll show you that our industry hits in places that we didn't even expect to show it. But, who cares about what you have to say? And believe it or not, somebody does. But you need to know, you need to hit the right audience with the right messaging to get impact. But what publications, mediums, collateral, channels appeal to your audience? Um, what are their deadlines and their editorial calendars? And how do they have an implementation schedule? One of the things we'll show you is an editorial calendar for an industry publication, but it tells you what they want to know. So on particular month, they're going to say, if you send me a particular story on food service or sustainability or, healthy eating or allergens or any of those above, you have a much higher likelihood of it actually showing up in the publication. That's, when we get down to who cares, that becomes really important. So, and next we make a plan, and we call it the DISD, but you define your pillars, and we've done that. We showed you those 5 highly crafted pillars. We investigate the potential media. We segment the story elements and determine which elements appeal to which audiences and decide where we want that impact, and then evaluate the impact that we had. And Bart, you want to tell a little bit about how that process was when we went with your students? And
That's the next slide, isn't it?
it is.
It is. We made a chart. Kimberly set us up with a format, and we made a chart, and this was a killer chart. It goes, oh, beyond the borders of this particular slide. We talked about for each of we first identified news topics. We started off putting each news topic under the 5 pillars: exceptional culinary experiences, eliminating food insecurity on campus, consistently excellent customer service, noteworthy sustainability impacts, thriving workplace. And we broke them down based on the feedback that we had gotten in this big meeting from all of our staff members. What were they interested in talking about? What did they think we should be talking about? Then across the top, we made a row of what media channels could we possibly be interested in going to. And we social media That's for videos. We talk to websites. We talk about industry publications, general interest publications. It goes on and on and on and on over the right-hand side of this uh, spreadsheet. Then I worked with students. I was very fortunate. I had two dedicated student writers who about 15 hours a week each. And we sat down with this and we ground through what do these things mean, who might be interested in them, which media might be interested in picking them up, and what kind of formatting would we need to do to get these messages kind of packed together to get them out. They were ready to give up on me, weren't they, Kimberly? More than one.
Yes, they were. They were saying, why is Kimberly here again? We don't like that chart.
We don't like
But
that.
it proved to be a very directive check mark and box kind of chart. I mean, so they were able to really go and say, okay, so if we're going to go to social media, we have these check marks and here's what we're going to talk about. And we were able to plan all of our social media ahead of time. And for those of you that use a social media planning tool like Hootsuite, this would be exceptionally easy for you to do. It plans all of that for you to manage, but it also shows you where you could potentially have impact, and it shows others in your university tend to have impact. One of the things that we did, I don't think it's in any of our slides, Bart, but one of the first things we did was sit down with university communications. And we sat down there with them and said, we're we're planning to make our program get noticed for a variety of reasons. And we gave them the same kind of, webinar that we're kind of working with you all on is, and here's why we want to get more notice. They were really kind of funny, like dining? Seriously? Um, what do you all have to say? Don't you just do food? And as we began to, Bart was artful and I was supporting and whatever, but in that conversation, what, 2 hours, maybe less, but by the end of it, they went, well, sure, we'd like to hear more. So, and as it turned out, they were one of our greatest advocates, weren't they, Bart?
They
They
have
really were.
been consistently very supportive of us. Yes, it's been great.
Take the next one, Bart. That would be awesome.
Sure.
Excel.
Kimberly referenced the editorial calendars that different magazines had. Now, just like a student who comes into a dining hall doesn't necessarily realize that there's a 4 week or 5 week cycle menu and that we have a long-term and term plan and that we're looking at now. I didn't quite realize, it's embarrassing, but I didn't quite realize that magazines planned out a year or 2 years in advance what the theme of each magazine was going to be. You can find that. It's online. You can call and you can ask them, and they will tell you what they're going to be doing each. When are they going to do a sustainability issue and get them a great sustainability story? When are they going to be doing a desserts issue? And we can talk about Maryland dairy ice cream. And this has been very useful, and we keep updating this as time rolls forward so that we understand what the magazines are looking for so that my student writers can help write and place art in these publications. We've had more success, but it does get easier and easier, and we're seeing more and more mentions over time in these. In fact, Josh, if you flip to the next one, we even found a publication called University Business, which has nothing to do with food service, but in March 2019 and 2018, I can't quite, they did a special feature section on food service in universities. And if I'd weeks earlier, we could have gotten an article in there because we had a bunch of good things to say. I did contact them. They reached back. We had several conversations. And next time they do a food service article, we will be in conversation much earlier so that we can be sure to get in there. Point being, there are many places where you can be placing these articles. The local newspapers, the Prince George's County Sentinel always does a back to school issue. And in College Park, Maryland, the size of the University of Maryland, that would be a really easy sell. And in fact, it was. We got in there this year, so it's a good thing.
Well, and I can't stress this enough. And actually, Bart and his students, and actually most of the schools that I work with, hear me say this over and over again. But don't bother to do anything unless you're going to get something out of it. And when I work with organizations and market strategies and marketing planning, that's the first thing I say is, what is it you're doing and why are you doing this? Well, it's a good idea, or somebody asked me to. is probably a good short-term answer, but it's never a good long-term answer. So I will always ask to evaluate your impact always in many, many ways. And you can do this. I mean, if your objective was to get more people aware of the purpose of an event, say, you know, you were bringing in the local farmers or something and on Earth Day, and the purpose of that event was to build better awareness with your student body on how well you work with local farmers and fresh produce and what have you, then what is your metric that you need to evaluate post-event, post-PR, post-marketing to let you know whether or not you actually hit your mark? And these are just examples, some of the things you might look at, but if you just keep asking the question, what do I hope to get out of this? Or what behavior do I hope to change? Um, you'll manage to get to your metrics that are important to you. But take a look at things like attendance. You know, if you have a dining hall that's off the beaten track and you're trying to get people to notice it more, attendance might be a good one. If you're trying to sell more, sometimes revenue is important in an occasional time. I'm kidding. Um, you know, did people get the right information from you? Can they demonstrate that they got the right information? Did they change behavior? One of the things that we constantly worked with at Virginia Tech was the compliance rates. In other words, we did a lot of marketing about the here's when you need to do things, and here's when you need to get them accomplished, and here's why you need to do that, and here's by when. Our greatest metric is did we get them to comply on time? Your social media analytics, most people fall back on that to say, hey, this is great. You know, we got so many likes, we got so many hits, we got so many friends. Um, my biggest caution to you all is that social media is awesome and we are all well versed in spending a lot of our productivity there, but please make sure you're getting something out of it, something attainable. And so look at your social media analytics, your Google Analytics and what have you, and evaluate them for the value that they bring to your organization. I am a huge productivity nut, and I don't like wasting anybody's time for any reason. So make sure that you're not spending way too much of your productivity on getting not enough out of something. So if Bart was to write this really long, gorgeous article and it got shown one time, one place to an audience that was less than we wanted, my guess is we wouldn't use that strategy again the next time. And then, of course, you know, make sure if you are trying to save labor that you actually do that. So one of the things that we did at Maryland was that we tracked a lot of varieties of things. And show them the next page, Bart.
We started tracking our media, and we looked at media mentions in the Diamondback, which is our student newspaper, in the Maryland paper. We looked at our media mentions on televisions, where we got to go um, in national magazines and industry magazines. And this was the start. This was from the beginning of the semester through about the last day of classes, 18. We did better than that spring 2019, and so far we're on track, well, actually to beat that by here in the fall of 2019.
Oh, great.
I know. So normally I'm not beat my chest kind of results kind of guy, but this is important. This is where we're putting our efforts, and we need to see what the pay on those efforts is. Are all of these, did they report exactly the way we wanted them to? Absolutely not. But all good publicity for our department and starts to build the buzz. We then need
And this is where, oh, excuse me, sorry, Bart. And this is where we got the figure of 350% increase in media attention. The year before, you had gotten 8 or 9 mentions. And after we implemented the strategy that we were just beginning at this point, it took off. And it was, so we had 350% increase, and you're getting ready to beat that. Can't wait to hear about that. Congratulations.
we're doing great. One thing that we needed to do through the spring semester was figure out a way to tell everyone about this. And we're telling you about our increase in media mentions. We also made sure to tell our own staff. This is where we're appearing in the media. We made sure that people have access to knowing about who else was talking about us. It's great if Food Service Magazine writes an article, but if your own students and your own administration and your own staff don't know about it, it's not quite as great as it would be if they. So we make sure we tell people how we're doing and why we're doing so well. And it's had a double impact. It's been great. Who's up next? Am I up still? Yeah.
You're up still. Yeah.
So so then we made a
On the
plan,
brag plan.
a brag plan. With this one talks about social media. We sat down, how often should we be posting to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Wall of Fame I'll show you in a minute. But we decided we needed to have a, for us, because we are a food service department, we need to know what we're doing to go on social media, how often we're going on there, what kind of things we're talking about when we're on there, who's going to be paying attention. We've noticed a huge change in students recently in that this semester, for the first several years, Twitter has not been active. Um, we're not seeing other tweet about us, so we're not getting the number of hits on our announcements with Twitter. So, but we're seeing a huge uptick in Instagram. So, from talking to my students and talking to people in general, Reddit and Instagram are the visual communications of freshmen this year. We're going to have to see where that goes, but we knew this because we were paying close attention to how often we were putting out different kinds of posts and how often people were seeing them. Back to Kimberly's, you shouldn't be putting the effort out if you're not getting the result from that. Anything to add to that?
I think it's a great plan, and unfortunately, this doesn't, one slide does not allow us to show you the entire plan. For the most part, I think I mentioned that, you spend so much time on social media because we've all been schooled there. But if you have 3,000 people on whatever channel you're working with, you need to kind of look at whether or not if that's reaching your full audience. If you've got a school of 50,000 people, you're not really reaching your audience through that medium. So be careful with social media. I think it's absolutely essential. First question anybody's going to ask you is, can't you put this out on social media? Yes, but you want to make sure that you're reaching that audience. And so, but we've got a lot of other things that go along with this brag plan, but this is just the social media piece of it. Thanks, Bart.
Yep. But back to making sure that our own people knew what's going on. We are in the process still of setting up a wall area in each of our dining halls where we tell our students, our customers, and where our staff are able to see what we're doing that's important, who is winning awards, what we've achieved, and how we're going about achieving it, so that we not because it's all about us, but because we need people to see that we're doing a very good job. That will feed them into believing that we're doing a very good job, and our job will get better and easier.
Get people believing that you're doing a very good job, of which you are, then you get the notice that you are looking for. So we've run quite a little bit of stuff by you pretty quickly, and we've only got maybe, oh, I don't know, 16, 17 minutes left. So I'd like to run through kind of the overall process summary that we talked about. We came inside, talked about where we wanted to go. We talked to ourselves. We figured out who our audiences were, why they needed to be our audience, where we were going to send it when we looked at the editorial calendars and what that would make it at. And we came up with many plans. And I will always go back to your students when we're looking at the plans and dissecting messaging and all that kind of stuff. And they were freshmen at University of Maryland at the time, and they kind of went, well, can't we just write? Can't we just write? So we had to lead them through this process. And I think by year two, they're kind of on board, right, Bart? so,
Absolutely.
so anyway, Josh, if you hit the next one.
And Kimberly and I'm better at leading, so that helps.
Well, when you have a plan, I think we said a year ago, this will seem so much easier next year because we knew where we were headed, and everything wasn't brand new all the time. And so now we've got a bunch of people on campus that are expecting dining to be putting things out. And they probably come to you, don't they, Bart?
Yep, they do.
Yeah. So work it through. We will, if we had a couple more hours, we would work through this process so you guys could actually walk away with a beginning of a plan. Don't hesitate. You'll see it at the end of this thing to let Bart and I be your network neighbors. Let us help you with this if you want to. But we've determined kind of what's important to us and what our next pillar is. And as we talk to ourselves, that's our next slide, Josh. When we talk to ourselves, we need to remember what our pillars really mean. And as Bart said, we were very fortunate because the director had a very clear idea of where she wanted to take the program. Colleen was awesome. I have worked with some others, and in fact, I am at the moment, where we are defining that through a process of, what is out there? What do our students want us to be? Who does the university want us to be? And so we're going at it from a completely different angle, but we will define those pillars and what they mean to our various audiences. Story that goes with that, define what it means to you and to those who care. Josh? Um, and we talked, this is over and over again, we talked our audiences, but I think again, the important piece on this slide is want to hear your story. Josh, might I mention CDT? CDT has gone to a very targeted kind of thematic process.
Yeah,
And what's coming up this year, this next issue in fall winter, is how our programs really impact student academic success. And it's
correct.
amazing how many people really want to know that. What is it we do in dining in a variety of formats that don't make us just eat? We improve academic success because as a parent, as a faculty member, as anybody else who has a vested interest in that student's success, I want to know how that's happening. So we talked about where to send it, who cared, what the schedule is, and then we made our plan, which is the next slide, Josh. And we through and show you more details if you give us a call. What are the pieces of your story? I just was working with another school and we broke down a 400 word article into 16 different messages to send out to different audiences. So, you don't have to write the article over and over and over again. You write it once and then you pick and you just choose your audience. Um, we talked about what we'll talk about, who wants to hear it, and what we were hoping to achieve. And the next one is evaluating your impact. Did you have a positive return on investment? And how often do you hear those few words? Return on investment. In our world, in marketing communications world, there's something that we didn't put in here because it's not a standard um, frame of reference, but what's your return on your objective? What was it you were trying to get somebody to hear? And it might even be a little tough to measure sometimes, but make sure that what you are putting out has a positive return. Did you reach the goals? And no. And basically, should you have changed everything and what's next? And so I have a simple little form that I use that allows you to have those four questions answered. And then at the bottom of that form, it basically says repeat with changes, don't bother, run as fast as you can. Because if you're not achieving what you want to achieve, don't keep beating your head over it. It's not worth it.
And if
So,
you want to be where last year, you have to know in a way you can remember and put your hands
yes.
on how good you were this.
And that in itself is a story to tell.
Mhm.
And, so we talk a lot about what is in a story, what can we do? And when I when I work with different organizations, I'll go, well, that's a story. That's a story. And then we start to put it underneath our pillars. And that's how, if you would look at University of Maryland's pillars and all of their stories beneath it, I think you have maybe what, 75 different stories underneath pillars.
I mean,
It's amazing.
original spreadsheet, yes.
Spreadsheet. And I haven't seen it recently, but my guess is it's much more than that right now because you've got all these new programs. But so when we talk about what's next, what we really talk about is making an impact. Um, and will it make an impact? You bet. But we need to make sure that we are doing that. And so part of what we are thinking about doing next is let's talk to the students. Let's talk to your customers. Are they hearing the information? Did they have a thought change once they heard the information? Um, are they seeing your feedback systems? Are you tracking your engagement? And what metrics and goals are you actually achieving? So, Bart, how is it at University of Maryland year two?
We are feeling successful. I think I said to you yesterday when we were talking that a rising tide raises all ships. It's a cliche, but it's really, it makes sense to me. Each of our successes makes the other success a little bit better. I'm not hearing as often, we don't tell our story. I'm hearing, did you see us on television yesterday? We were on WPGC about the ice cream. And people are knowing what we're doing. People hear feeling better about their jobs and more like our story is being told and told with respect for our efforts.
So, with that, Josh, if you'll take the next slide. This is a repeat of slide 2.
Ugh.
But we would like to, Bart and I both went down this path together. I have worked with a couple other schools, but the University of Maryland was probably the most complete package that we've actually done. But use us as our notice network. Don't hesitate at all to call us, to email us, ask a random question or a series of questions. But we believe in this. And I didn't just tell Bart to do this. I didn't just consult. And he didn't he did wonderfully with the information that he had, but I learned as much from University of Maryland as you could have possibly learned from me. So it was an awesome experience. We absolutely hope that you get to go through something this way, but in the meantime, don't hesitate to call us, either one of us. And with that, I don't think we have anything else, Josh.
No, I just, well, thank you. Thank you, Bart and Kimberly. What a great presentation, and certainly a lot of information we can benefit from here at NACUFS as well. So thank you.
Good to
No,
see your head
always.
nod once in a while. So
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's all good. It's all good. I just put a little message out there to see if anybody has any questions. I believe we've got about a little under 10 minutes left. If there are any of our attendees who would like to pose a question, or again, you want to locate the chat function and then make sure that it's going to either all participants or to the host. So I'll just, if you guys just stay on the line for a moment,
sure.
and I will. And I will mediate that. Haven't seen any come in, but that doesn't. You know what I really liked in your presentation is involving your team. Which is sort of the 360. You make sure you include everybody because everybody's viewpoint or opinion has weight and also might enlighten you in ways you don't expect. So,
We have over 2,100 people who work with us.
wow.
And if each of those people can tell even a little piece of our story in a positive way to one of our guests, that's a great thing.
Right, right,
Well, and I totally believe that if you don't bring them on, they sincerely won't know what to say about what you need to know. And people say, "Oh, they could sabotage your program." I said, "No, it's called non-intentional sabotage." But if you don't tell them what to tell them, they're going to make it up. So
right.
if they understand what we're all about, then they're definitely going to be able to say it. And it's been evidenced at some of our colleagues' schools where everybody's on the same page, and it's phenomenal to watch.
Right, right. Um, People are looking for attention, and if they don't get that, not the kind we're thinking about in negative, but sort of the idea of when you pay attention to people and they participate, they feel more valued also and more motivated. And you're right, in the absence of information, people will fill that gap with their own thoughts or their own story. So. I'm not seeing any questions coming up. I'm leaving the slide up for a couple of
Okay.
minutes with both of your email addresses. I increased the font size there a little bit so people can see that. I apologize for having difficulties with the PowerPoint. I ended up kind of shrinking the slides down a little bit, but I'm hoping it was okay. So I'm not hearing from anybody else. It looks like about 4 folks have already logged off. So
Okay.
not unless the 2 of you have anything else, I think we're good to go. And for those of you out there, I typically will send a copy of the recording to you, and I'll send one to Bart and one to Kimberly as well. So
Great.
Gosh,
Thank
thank you
you.
for mentoring us through this. It's been a good experience. Thank you.
Yes.
you guys have done a great job. All the challenges are on my end. So anyway, thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Favorite advice was don't move, Kimberly. Don't touch anything. So it was
That's right.
great.
That's right. As I moved and did things, but yeah,
So
I'm telling you. So thank you both.
thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again in the new year, at a NACUFS regional conference or other events. So take care. Thank you to both of you.
Bye bye.